Now hi Jeff, good morning. Okay, now have been studying this book called Mastery, The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard. And I want to just give a summary of what mastery is about. So George Leonard defines mastery as the mysterious process during which what is at first difficult becomes progressively easier and more pleasurable through practice. If there's any sure route to success and fulfillment in life, it is to be found in the long term, essentially goalless process of mastery. To practice for the sake of practice itself, not for the result. Last week we looked at why resolutions fail and what to do about it. And we found out it was because of homeostasis. Now, George Leonard gives 5 guidelines, or what he calls tools to mastery. And the first, which we discussed last week, was to be aware of the way homeostasis works. So we looked at homeostasis quite a bit last week. Today, let's look at the remaining 4 tools to mastery. So the second tool is be willing to negotiate with your resistance to change. Okay, be willing to negotiate with your resistance to change. I like the word negotiate. Merriam-Webster dictionary suggests negotiate is to plan out, usually with subtle skill or care. Okay, with subtle skill or care, not blindly charge ahead like an obsessive bull. George Leonard explains. So, what should you do when you run into resistance? When the red lights flash and the alarm bells ring? Well, you don't back off and you don't bull your way through. Negotiation is the ticket to successful long-term change in everything from increasing your running speed to transforming your organization. The long-distance runner working for a faster time on a measured course negotiates with homeostasis by using pain not as an adversary, but as the best possible guide to performance. So I like what he says, pain not as an adversary, but as a friend. I guess that is why no pain, no gain is a rule of thumb for the right level of training. So, how do you know whether you're training enough? Well, people say no pain, no gain. Muhammad Ali said, I don't count the sit ups. I only start counting when it starts hurting because they're the only ones that count. That's what makes you a champion. So, negotiation is a helpful idea. It is to help you stay on the safe side of the edge and not get injured, which could mean a longer break from practice. Now, when I personally took up chi running, I had to switch to a completely new style of running, from landing on my heel to landing midfoot, from wearing heavily cushioned shoes to wearing zero drop Vibram five fingers. The shoes that Jeff wears. Jeff really likes those five fingers. Okay, and these zero drop Vibram five fingers have hardly any cushion. In fact, the style was called barefoot running. So you wore these shoes not for cushioning, but only to prevent getting burned by the hot pavement and stepping on dog shit. Okay. The, the instructors of chi running told us to adjust very slowly, okay, and not to increase our distance by more than 10% each week. And that was to avoid injury. So negotiation is to avoid injury too. Runners and athletes know how to have a rhythm of a hard day followed by an easy day. Okay, hard and easy. This is to allow the muscles to repair, recover, and grow. They also have an off season so that they can rest physically, psychologically, and then re-establish social relationships. Because when you're in the thick of things, you got no time for family or friends. All these things, okay, are a part of life. So George Leonard says the change-oriented manager keeps his or her eyes and ears open for signs of dissatisfaction or dislocation, then plays the edge of discontent, the inevitable escort of transformation. Okay. So that's resistance. Okay, discontent is resistance. The body reacts, everyone physically reacts, emotionally reacts. Now, the fine art of playing the edge in this case involves a willingness to take one step back for every two forward, sometimes vice versa. It also demands a determination to keep pushing, but not without awareness. Okay? Simply turning off your awareness to the warnings deprives you of guidance and risks damaging the system. Simply pushing your way through despite the warning signals increases the possibility of backsliding. You can never be sure, George Leonard says, exactly where the resistance will pop up. A feeling of anxiety, psychosomatic complaints, no, that means physically something goes wrong, a tendency towards self-sabotage, squabbles with family, friends, or fellow workers. None of the above. Well, if it's none of the above, stay alert. Be prepared for serious negotiations. Okay, so that was the second tool. Uh, the second tool is be willing to negotiate with your resistance to change. Okay. The third tool is to develop a support system. George Leonard says you can do it alone, but it helps a great deal to have other people with and whom you can share the joys and perils of the change you're making. The best support system would involve people who have gone through or are going through a similar process, people who can tell their own stories of change and listen to yours, people who will brace you up when you start to backslide and encourage you when you don't. Stand up paddling, okay, SUP, is our most recent experience of the journey to mastery. And we have come so far simply because of the community. And I would say it's a growing community, okay, of paddlers and coaches. Susan, our Susan Chang, she went paddling to see sunrise on the sea last Sunday. This is what she wrote on her Facebook post. This wonderful experience wouldn't have happened if I had given up after the first couple of lessons, which I had been tempted to do. Wobbling on a board was super uncomfortable for the first couple of sessions. As a friend said after lesson one, we got more reasons not to do this than we got reasons to do it. Since it seemed a good idea to get out of our comfort zone, and it was good exercise, we persisted. My current self is grateful to my earlier self for persisting. That's what Susan wrote. And George Leonard asks, and what if your quest for mastery is a lonely one? That means no community. What if you can find no fellow voyagers on that particular path? At the least, you can let the people close to you know what you're doing and ask for their support. Now, the fourth tool is to follow a regular practice. If you remember, we talked about 5 keys to mastery, and practice was the second key. Okay, practice is the second key to mastery. George Leonard talks a lot about practice, and he explains why it helps to follow a regular practice. He says people embarking on any type of change can gain stability and comfort through practicing some worthwhile activity on a more or less regular basis. Not so much for the sake of achieving an external goal as simply for its own sake. A traveler on the path of mastery is again fortunate, for practice in this sense, as I've said more than once, is the foundation of the path itself. He says the circumstances are particularly happy in case you've already established a regular practice in something else before facing the challenge and change of beginning a new one. It's easier to start applying the principle of mastery to your profession or your primary relationship if you've already established a regular morning exercise program. Okay, so you're already practicing things in your life, and one thing he mentions is exercise. Okay, practice is a habit, and any regular practice provides a sort of underlying homeostasis, a stable base during the instability of change. So what he's saying is that if you have a current practice of doing something, it helps maintain homeostasis, stability in your life when you are starting something new. So not everything is new. You already got something that is maintaining. But practice is also a way to deal with homeostasis that works against the new thing you're starting. Because the more you practice, the more changes will take place, the more you will improve to make the old ways, the uncomfortable ways, a distant memory. Now with SUP, let me take the example again. We had our introductory lesson on January the 12th. Okay, it is now 21st of March. Just 9 weeks later, okay, we've had 2 hours of practice at least once a week, sometimes twice. I myself, in the 9 weeks, I've had a total of 11 practice sessions. And this is what one of our coaches, Julia, what she WhatsApped the group last Friday. Slow and steady, everyone's getting better. Especially Susan has improved a lot. Okay, so this is real encouragement. And lastly, the last tool, the fifth tool to mastery, is to dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. This is Tony Robbins' canny, okay, constant and never-ending improvement. George Leonard says we tend to forget that learning is much more than book learning. To learn is to change. Education, whether it involves books, body, or behavior, is a process that changes the learner. It doesn't have to end at college, at graduation, or at age 40 or 60 or 80. And the best learning of all involves learning how to learn. That is, to change. Because learning is about change. The lifelong learner is essentially one who has learned to deal with homeostasis simply because he or she is doing it all the time. That's what George Leonard has to say. Great words. Now, 2 weeks ago, I signed up for an online training by Robin Sharma. In the latest video I watched, this is what he said about a tactic to being world class. He shared a number of tactics. This was the second tactic. Secondly, get your associations to world class. This year alone, I will go to 5 conferences. I invest in my education. I invest in my self-development. I spend more money than you can imagine learning insights, reverse engineering my thinking, figuring out how to build an even better business, figuring out how to be more productive, figuring out how to be of even more service to you, to leverage internet, to leverage possibility. The ordinary people, what they worry about is cost. The billionaires, the best of the best, they're ultra successful. They ask themselves, what is the value if I go to this conference? So what I'm suggesting to you, tactic number 2, says Robin Sharma, is go to the conferences, go to the events, go to the networking associations, find the best people in the world who do what you do, living as you wish to live, and go there. So my simple message to all of us here is go to the New Skin Live this Saturday. That's where all the winners are, the awardees are. Go there, okay? The only problem is it's free of charge to go by Zoom or go physically. If you get tickets, some of us have got physical tickets to be there, But this is about being with the best, okay? Developing a lifelong learning. Okay. So, and Robin Sharma continues to say, please don't say I can't do that, I can't afford it. Find a way to get there. Until your mission is an obsession, nothing will change your life. Your life is just too valuable for you not to change it, for you not to be the best in the world, for you not to express your talents. And George Leonard ends by saying, lifelong learning is the special province of those who travel the path of mastery, the path that never ends. So that's my sharing for today, the tools of mastery. Next week, we look at getting energy for mastery. Okay, so we get energy not just from reset, but how to get energy for mastery.